April 4th, 2026, a date that would be etched into the memory of billions. The world woke to a nightmare, one that seemed almost unimaginable just hours before. News spread like wildfire, and everywhere people scrambled for answers, their faces a mix of disbelief and fear. Brent crude oil prices had doubled overnight, surging past $200 a barrel. The spike was historic, shattering records and sending shockwaves through every sector of the global economy. Financial markets from Tokyo to New York plunged into chaos. Trillions wiped out before the opening bells finished ringing. Investors watched in horror as fortunes evaporated in minutes, and uncertainty gripped every trading floor. The cause? The Strait of Hormuz, Earth's most vital energy choke point, was closed. This narrow passage, responsible for a fifth of the world's oil supply, had become a flashpoint overnight. This wasn't a sudden disaster, but the result of weeks of escalating tensions in the Persian Gulf. Drone strikes, sabotage, and threats traded between Washington and Tehran. Each incident had ratcheted up the stakes inch by inch until the world stood on the edge. The White House issued a blunt ultimatum. Further aggression would be met with overwhelming force. The message was clear, but the world held its breath, unsure what would come next. Instead of backing down, Iran pushed the world to the brink. Leaders in Tehran stood defiant, determined to show strength in the face of mounting pressure. Supply chains buckled, airlines grounded flights, and gas lines snaked for miles across Europe and Asia. Everyday life was upended, as shortages and uncertainty spread from city to city. The crisis was no longer distant, it was personal, affecting billions. In living rooms and workplaces, anxiety grew as people wondered how long the turmoil would last. The intricate system powering our modern world faced its greatest test in a generation. Every link in the chain was strained, and the fragility of globalization was laid bare for all to see. At the heart of it all, could the threat of overwhelming force create peace? Or would it spark war? The world's leaders weighed their options, knowing that a single misstep could change history. The globalized economy's strength had become its greatest vulnerability. What once connected nations now threatened to pull them apart. The fate of nations now rested on the decisions of a few in Washington and Tehran. As the world watched and waited, the next move would determine whether the crisis would end in peace or spiral into something far worse. The roots of this crisis, Operation Epic Fury, were sown months earlier as a Pentagon contingency plan, crafted in utmost secrecy by top military strategists. Behind closed doors, officials debated scenarios, weighed risks, and prepared for the unthinkable, a direct confrontation with Iran. The plan called for devastating airstrikes against Iran's nuclear and military sites, aiming to cripple Tehran's capabilities before they could retaliate. The world watched as bombers soared through the night, targeting facilities deep inside Iranian territory. But secrecy didn't last. The plan leaked, sending Tehran a clear message: don't test American resolve. Headlines blared, and the streets of Tehran buzzed with anxiety and speculation. Years of shadow conflict, proxies, sanctions, cyber attacks had suddenly become direct and dangerous. What was once a simmering standoff now threatened to boil over into open war. The immediate trigger: a deadly drone attack on a U.S. destroyer in the Gulf of Oman. The strike left sailors dead and the ship crippled, shocking the world and igniting outrage in Washington. U.S. intelligence quickly blamed Iran's Revolutionary Guard. Tehran, however, vehemently denied any involvement, calling the accusations baseless and provocative. For Washington, this was the final straw. The administration faced mounting pressure from Congress, the military, and the public to respond decisively. The president, under intense scrutiny and determined to project strength, put U.S. forces on high alert and activated the first phases of Epic Fury. Troops mobilized, equipment was readied, and the world braced for escalation. For America, credibility and global security were at stake. Allies watched closely, wondering if the U.S. would follow through on its threats. For Iran, survival and defiance were non-negotiable. The government rallied its people, vowing to resist any foreign aggression. Years of crippling sanctions had hardened Tehran's resolve, forging a sense of resilience and unity among its citizens. Backing down meant surrender. Escalation was a necessity. The regime saw no choice but to prepare for a fight, mobilizing forces and bracing for impact. Iran's leverage? The Strait of Hormuz, a vital choke point for global oil shipments. Any disruption here could send shockwaves through the world economy. The world was now caught in a deadly game of brinkmanship, with every move watched, every decision carrying the risk of catastrophic escalation. Iran responded as predicted, not with a direct attack, but with asymmetric warfare. Instead of launching missiles or sending troops across borders, they chose a strategy designed to disrupt and destabilize, using unconventional tactics to maximize global impact while minimizing their own risk. IRGC speedboats swarmed the Strait of Hormuz, laying deadly mines and activating hidden missile batteries along the coast. The narrow waterway, already tense, became a maze of threats, every ship a potential target, every passage fraught with danger. Iran declared the strait a military exclusion zone, effectively blockading the world's energy artery. International vessels were warned to stay away, and the threat of attack loomed over every attempt to pass through. 1/5 of global oil and a third of LNG exports were suddenly at risk. The world's energy lifeline was squeezed, sending shockwaves through every continent dependent on these vital resources. The global supply chain seized up, oil tankers, container ships and factories worldwide ground to a halt. Production lines stopped, deliveries missed, and shelves began to empty as the ripple effects spread. Europe faced energy rationing, Asian economies braced for shutdowns. In cities across the globe, lights dimmed, factories closed, and uncertainty grew as leaders scrambled for solutions. The blockade exposed a brutal truth. Our efficient interconnected world is terrifyingly fragile in conflict. What once seemed like a seamless web of commerce now revealed its vulnerability to disruption. The US president faced a terrible choice: escalate militarily, or risk global economic collapse. Every option carried enormous risks, and the world waited for a decision that could shape the future. Clearing the strait would be slow, dangerous, and costly. Each mine removed was a victory, but the threat remained, and the cost in time and resources mounted with every passing hour. What was meant to be a surgical threat had become a global crisis. Markets crashed, headlines screamed, and uncertainty gripped every nation as the situation spiraled out of control. Iran's move turned a standoff into an economic catastrophe. The world watched, paralyzed, as leaders struggled to respond to a crisis that seemed to grow by the hour. The stakes had never been higher. Every decision now carried consequences that would echo across the globe for years to come. In the best-case scenario, economic terror forces a return to sanity. The UN Security Council convenes an emergency session. Global pressure mounts on both Washington and Tehran. America's allies demand restraint, offering to mediate. China and Russia, wary of global depression, pressure Iran to reopen the strait. Beijing offers incentives and security guarantees, framing de-escalation as a responsible global act. Both sides find a narrow off-ramp. The US pauses epic fury. Iran reopens Hormuz. Within 72 hours, a deal is struck. Mine sweeping begins. Oil flows resume. Markets rebound, oil prices stabilize, and the world exhales. The crisis becomes a case study in coercive diplomacy. The threat of war prevents it. Scars and tensions remain. But disaster is averted. The global system, shaken, holds. For now. But what if the gamble fails? Iran refuses to back down, betting a US strike will unify its people and bog America down. The president authorizes airstrikes. Operation Epic Fury begins. Iran's response is chaos. Proxies across the Middle East attack US bases, embassies, and allied oil infrastructure. Oil facilities burn, millions of barrels lost daily. The conflict engulfs the region. Oil prices skyrocket, triggering a global recession. Industries halt, layoffs surge, and ordinary people suffer. Political fallout is swift, governments collapse, protests erupt worldwide. America's rivals exploit the chaos. Russia moves in Eastern Europe. China eyes Taiwan. The international order fractures. Alliances strain to breaking. The threat meant to enforce order unleashes global instability. The world map begins to redraw itself. The cost of coercion is chaos. We stand at a fork in the road. Fragile peace or catastrophic war. Operation Epic Fury is fiction, but the dilemma is real. Is the threat of overwhelming force a tool for peace, or reckless gambling? Some argue only credible threats prevent war and uphold order. Others warn such threats are destabilizing, making conflict more likely. The best case diplomacy prevails under the shadow of force. The worst case escalation spirals out of control, consuming the world. Security may lie in patient diplomacy, not threats. The future depends on the choices of leaders and their ability to pull back from the brink. Next time a leader issues such a threat, ask, strategist or gambler, which future do you believe is more likely?